Hey everybody, happy Friday! Oh my god, first of all, it's Friday, so I'm pretty excited. But second of all, got a really nice topic today. It's sort of an update on my journey into learning Mandarin Chinese, but also more specifically, learning how to read books in Mandarin Chinese. As many of you will know, that's just always such a great and just delightful thing for me, is becoming able to read novels or any kind of story I want in a new language. But I think there's something especially magical about languages that are using different scripts than my native language, or especially languages with Chinese characters. But before that, I do have to say that many of you noticed something was missing from my recent couple of videos, and it's coffee. I know, the last few videos I had to film them at very weird times of the day where coffee wasn't a great option, but it's now like 5:35 in the morning here in San Francisco, and I have my coffee, so I feel whole again, and I'm delighted that so many of you noticed the missing coffee cup. Oh, how did we ever do this without coffee? It doesn't make any sense. Anyway, without further ado, let's jump into another awesome video after one more sip of coffee. Okay, so right before we get started, these graded readers that we're going to be talking about today, these are created by Mandarin Companion, and I'm actually going to be doing a whole conversation series with one of the co-founders of Mandarin Companion, Jared Turner. Now, Jared and John Pasden are the co-founders of this company. They've just done such a spectacular job on these books, and I just think they're a delightful company. They're two delightful people. And so Jared and I are going to be doing a whole series of, I think, 4 conversations where we talk about the topic of extensive reading. So Jared has been super involved just getting out there, reading tons and tons of literature behind extensive reading, but also going to conferences, speaking to teachers of Chinese programs, and just spreading the word and lots of good information about that topic. So that's coming up. So I think we're gonna have 4 videos. I'll release 1 per week, I think on a Friday for about a month. But also, one of my Patreon supporter advantages is that you get to actually ask questions in advance to people who I interview. I've got a lot of really cool interviews coming up at the end of this year and next year as well. So if you want to have the opportunity to ask questions about extensive reading, and I can ask those to Jared in one of our special edition episodes of that series, then please feel free to go and join my Patreon page. I would really love it. But if not, of course, I'll be posting the 4 main conversations on this channel. Okay, so I am really excited to tell you today about how I just finished my very first Mandarin Chinese graded reader. I'm just so excited. There's something just so special about finishing a book. Even if it's a simplified graded reader, you know, it's still just so special to open a book and then to turn that last page and just to feel like you finished something, and especially you finished a story. I don't know, I had such a good experience. I've done this, you know, in multiple languages. Some languages like French, I just dove into novels, and that was a whole different animal, and that was a very, very long journey. And to be honest, I did the same thing with Japanese to a degree, which was a very long journey. And so with other languages like Mandarin, I've taken the route of being kind to myself. But there is also a lot of good, solid research behind why reading things like graded readers is a great idea. But again, I won't spoil the awesome conversation I'm gonna have with Jared coming up. But I just wanted to give you an update on how this process went. You know, I started out reading this and I was really enjoying it. But as I've mentioned in a few recent videos, I ended up in this interesting period where, you know, Mandarin was going really well, but German was really struggling, and then they kind of switched. And so I had a few weeks where I was doing really well with German, but my Mandarin studies were really struggling. So I was basically just reviewing vocabulary. I was using Skritter. I've talked about them a lot on this channel, sort of review my characters, but I wasn't making any progress with my reading. And so what I did recently, once I really bounced back and I've just gotten into such a fantastic rhythm where every day I'm doing a really good amount of German and a really good amount of Mandarin. Well, so I started reading the book again. So round about 9 days ago, I started from chapter 1. And what I did was I was reading one chapter per day every evening before bed. I would sit on my couch here, cup of herbal tea, and I read through one chapter. And what I did is after reading the chapter, I went back and I added the words that I didn't know or words that I thought were really interesting. I added those to my Skritter deck, which I'll link in the description, because if you join Skritter, or if you're already using Skritter for Chinese, first of all, you can get a discount with my affiliate code, but I do also have my decks on there that you can study. So I have a whole deck where I put all the words that I found interesting or words I didn't know from this first graded reader. And so what I would do is during the daytime, the next day, when I would go on a walk or when I was sitting on a bench or whatever, when I would have some downtime during the day, I would sort of just, learn and review those new words inside of Skritter. And then the next day I would read chapter 2 and chapter 3. And the cool thing is, because this is a graded reader, I actually started to find that once I got to chapters 3, 4, 5, 6, sometimes there were literally 2 new words for me in the whole chapter, right? And that is fantastic, and that is the power of graded readers. It's that they really do give you some solid, comprehensible input that's sort of packaged for you into a story, and you're really able to build up some momentum. Now, one thing that I found is that, I always read out loud, and I'm gonna be doing some reading into research behind reading out loud versus reading silently. For me, reading out loud has always intuitively just felt like it's more helpful in terms of learning a language. For me, the cognitive process of reading out loud, it just feels so much deeper. And especially with, languages like Mandarin, where we have this issue of tones. And so it's a fantastic opportunity for me to practice my tones and to really challenge myself. But I think in general, it's a great opportunity to practice pronunciation and just to practice producing the language through your mouth, which is, pretty important if you're going to be speaking that language one day. So I've been mostly reading out loud, and what I do find is that I very often read the same sentence 2 or 3 times, right? So I'll be reading a sentence here, and I'll very often read the first half of the sentence, and I'll go back and read it again. I'll read the whole sentence, then I'll, look at the last bit again, then I'll read through the whole thing. So when I'm reading this book, it's definitely not just like, end to end in one fell swoop. It's very much like forward 5 steps, back 2, forward 3 steps, back 1, forward 6 steps, back 2. But I did find that as I went through the book, my reading speed did actually increase. And so the last, I'd say, 2 days in a row, I was able to read 2 chapters in one night. And that was really, really satisfying. It's not a perfect measure because I also spent a little bit more time on those chapters. Just overall, a really great experience. And the best thing of all is that I still have 6 other books from Mandarin Companion. So I actually, just last night, I started Sherlock Holmes and the Case of the Curly-Haired Company, which I'm really looking forward to. This first one, Emma, was a wonderful adaptation of Jane Austen's Emma. And of course, a lot of drama and, very much a sort of Chinese romantic drama story. Whereas this one, of course, is a crime mystery story. And so I love this sort of drastic switch from one genre to the other. And it's just so darn cool that I'm reading all this stuff in Mandarin. So one question you may have is, do I feel like this improved my Mandarin? I do. I definitely feel a lot more comfortable now with a whole range of vocabulary. Because again, a lot of what I'm doing when reading these books is I'm reinforcing words that I already knew. I definitely find, especially in Mandarin, I'm still at the stage where sometimes I've got these words, right, that I get really solid with. I'm like, 总是 for always, right? And I know that word. I'm like, yeah, cool. Things like this, right? So I have these words, I learned it, I've done it, I've seen it, I've said it in conversation, right? But I'm at the stage in Mandarin where, maybe a month later, I don't see the word again, and all of a sudden, I can't remember how to say it, right? So it still takes quite a bit of time for these words to really, really sink in to my long-term memory. So, those words I just mentioned, they came up a lot in Mo, which is the Chinese name of the book. So yeah, I definitely reinforced a lot of things I knew. Also, grammatical structures. I found that my ability to just process Chinese really improved through reading this book. And I've often spoken about this. It's almost like when you start out learning a language, your head is a computer and it doesn't have a lot of processing power, right? It doesn't have a lot of memory, perhaps, right? It doesn't have a lot of resources. And to me, it feels like one of the processes that we go through, it's almost like giving your brain more processing power to process that language, right? I feel like I have more resources available. I feel faster. And so as I'm reading Chinese now, in the beginning, like I said, I would have to reread sentences a lot. I'd have to pause. It was like I just didn't have the power in my brain, in the Chinese portion of my brain, to take in Chinese, process it, and then comprehend it quickly enough to continue in one fluid stream. Whereas now, I'm finding longer and longer sentences that I'm able to just read, comprehend, and keep going, right? And the cool thing is about that is it transfers to my listening comprehension. I've always found that as my listening comprehension gets better, specifically with this ability to process language fluidly, that impacts my ability to do the same with reading and vice versa. So one thing I'm really excited to see is how finishing all these graded readers impacts my listening comprehension, because I really do believe, aside from the fact that I'm going to be, increasing my vocabulary, getting more comfortable with longer and more complex sentences, like I said, just getting lots of practice at taking in Chinese, comprehending it, processing it, and then moving on without needing to stop, go back, redigest it. Anyway, that's basically all I have for you today. And then of course I have my language activity tracking sheets. The first one is German, and that's really coming along well. You'll notice a whole lot more orange on there with my Babbel lessons. And then of course the second one is my Mandarin Chinese tracking sheet, and you'll see a lot more blue starting to appear in the middle. Those are my graded readers. So I've got my 2 pencils at all time, and yeah, I'm just loving it. So I look forward to updating you when I finish my second graded reader in Mandarin Chinese. Honestly, I can't wait to see the impact of finishing 7 of these. And by the way, the first 4, I think, that I have are level 1 with 300 unique Chinese characters. But the last 3 are level 2, where there's 450 characters, and the stories are a bit longer, a bit more complex. So I'm also really looking forward to that. Okay, everybody, I hope you have a fantastic Friday, a wonderful weekend, and I will see you back here on Monday.